Welcome back to Why Blank Lost after almost a couple months off. As we kick things off with our Survivor 46 preview.
Oh, my word, right?
Yes. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my co-host, Jessica Lewis.
I know it's been a long time. You have been very busy on the podcast circuit, I must say. I have not been. So it's nice to be back in this space with you, my favorite podcasting partner.
All right. Yay.
Notice he didn't say the same.
Well, I mean, I don't want to upset anybody. Okay, if you don't tell anyone else, then,
I won't.
It's just between you and me.
Okay. All right. I won't say anything. It's fine.
But for those who have listened before, welcome back. For those who haven't, welcome.
Right.
And to bring you up to speed, once the season starts, each week we will discuss what each voted out player, or even some that don't get voted out if they get injured or leave some other way, did right and wrong in terms of rules I originally wrote back after the very first season of Survivor and have been updating ever since. We look at each episode and also back to everything that has led up to it. And we don't just rely on what's on TV, but also dive into everything that's available that's not a spoiler, including interviews, secret scenes, social media, and more. Now, for a while, we were splitting up our Survivor preview podcast into 3 parts, but then last season we combined it into one, and we're doing that again this season.
Yes,
by now, you've all had plenty of time to listen to Mike Bloom's interviews here on RHAP and or read them in Parade, plus all the other info that's out about the players. So we aren't going to rehash all of that information. And, for most of the players, we're not going to go into the little details like their pet peeves, unless they're really interesting. Instead, we will talk briefly about each of the players and focus as much as possible on things that we believe will be important to their game and how we think they'll do with the rules based on the things they've said. Right. At the end, we'll each pick who we think will do the best and worst. And as a reminder, 2 seasons ago, someone on this podcast got the correct winner prediction.
Here we go.
Yeah. Now,
2 seasons ago.
Yeah. 44.
Right.
This is 46.
I know. What was 45?
Jam. 45 was D.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what you had for 45.
It's not important. Whatever it was.
No, I feel it is important.
No.
I love how you want to just go back 2 seasons and let's only talk about that one.
Well, I mean,
it's 45.
I mean, it's the most recent winner prediction that either of us have had.
Yeah, and listen, let's just be honest with everyone who's listening, listeners who've already heard this podcast and know that I have the butterfly effect, and this is a problem. This is definitely a problem. So I apologize ahead of time to whoever I choose as my winner pick, because I feel like you're up to something over there.
This is the shirt that you should wear.
I know.
The shirt that you got me, which is from an old video that says "Why You Lost," and it has an arrow pointing upward. And so Jessica should be wearing it for.
I should. I apologize.
Yes.
So yes, okay. So 2 seasons ago, you picked the winner. Last season, you didn't do so hot, and I did better than you last season, even though my winner pick still didn't win.
I mean, yeah. Now, listeners, and especially any contestants tuning in, should remember we're basing almost everything we'll be discussing off a relatively small amount of information. So if we say it sounds like someone's game will be terrible, well, obviously, as we were just talking about, we have a nearly 100% success rate with our predictions.
Yes.
But there's always the off chance that we could be wrong. So just keep that in mind. And with that, let's get started.
Excellent.
We're going to go through each tribe alphabetically by first name, except in cases where we already know they aren't using their first name. And then as it happens, that person falls in the same order either way. So we will begin with the Nami tribe, who is in orange. And video people, we have a picture up so that, as a visual aid for both ourselves, if we're honest, and also for you, if you're watching this instead of just listening.
Oh, that's fun. I think I just noticed. Are those pineapples on his shirt?
Um,
I feel
yes,
like
they
those are
are. They
pineapples.
are. So, all right, we start with Hunter. That's the person wearing the pineapples. He is 28 and a science teacher from Mississippi who has run Survivor games for his students.
Mhm.
He first started watching Survivor in college, beginning with Kagian. And I like what Hunter says about how some people come into the game saying they know how to deal with people, but then he lists certain professions like doctors and private lawyers who are normally dealing with like willing customers, people who want them there. And
Mm,
so it's not really the same thing. Um, but as a teacher, he has to handle some kids who don't really want to be there. And
yes.
I totally get that because when I was younger and then even as I got older, I considered becoming a science teacher, but I only wanted to do it for the kids who wanted to be there. And I
Mm,
knew that wasn't possible. Um, and as a matter of fact, usually the way things get assigned, you have to work yourself up to the higher level classes, and the higher level are often where the kids, who really want to be there are.
mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
just, that's one reason that I never did it. So I totally get where he's coming from.
And I
Um,
do feel like, if I'm remembering correctly, the school that he teaches at is for, um, I want to say, like, students that might have had problems in other schools. I feel like it's almost like
or in
a.
the home, yes.
Yes, yes. So I feel like he's probably dealing with that on a much more extreme level than you would
Right.
think when it's just a, potentially regular public school. So I agree with that sentiment, where it's, yes, those individuals, those doctors, those lawyers, they probably are being listened to, but I guess it depends on who they're speaking to, right?
Right.
But I do think that is a good approach for him to have in this game for sure.
Yeah. Now, Hunter noticed he's one of the bigger guys there, and he intends to play into it, saying, I'll be fine being labeled as a kind of like a meathead, doesn't understand the strategy a whole lot. Just go with the flow, has a good time, wants to climb the coconut trees and build cool shelters. That's what I want to be perceived as. Now, I'm not sure how he undersells himself like that while also telling people he's a science teacher, though, admittedly, I had a couple science teachers in my time who maybe weren't the brightest. So I guess he could go that route. Um, he also knows he could be targeted shortly after the merge, so he wants to get a larger group together to protect each other and take control, which is a good idea, but we'll see how it works out because it seems like inevitably when you get a group of like-minded threats together like that, they all turn on each other.
Mm. Yeah, but I do think, though, just to go back to the first component where
Mm-hmm.
he's speaking about how he wants to be perceived or how he expects to be perceived, I will say that in my watching his recorded interview and listening to him speak, I did not get the doctor. I had a 4.0 GPA when I graduated
Mm-hmm.
from him. So I do think that he's going to be able to lean into that more of the, I'm just maybe the strong guy, even if he tells him he's a science teacher, because I don't think that science teacher idea or that career is necessarily going to come across as something that could be threatening, especially if he explains the circumstances in the school in which he teaches.
Yeah.
So I think he could certainly lean into that and kind of rely upon that being the perceived way is what people will see him as, and I think he can sell that well, because he didn't strike me as someone who comes across as like this super smart brainiac kind of person. So I think it could work for him. I do.
Okay. Um, I liked Hunter's answer about advantages and idols, as he said, I would love to find some, but I'm not going to jeopardize my game to seek it out. The real pieces in the game aren't the advantages, it's the people.
Yes. Yes.
Bingo. Thank you.
Mhm.
There's a reason scheme and plot is rule number 1, and idols are rule number 7.
Yes. I do think that he is a very nice balance about the approach that he wants to take to this game. And I appreciate that he's going to be considering what trumps, what's more important, what should he focus on. I think that's going to be lovely for his game as well.
Okay. Did you have anything else about Hunter?
Let's see. I will say I was a little taken aback when I first started listening to him in his interview, because I had a different expectation, and just kind of on paper versus what that I ended up hearing him speak to. But I feel like he is one of the players that quite a few other individuals were describing. And so he seems to have made a bit of um, mm, some type of an impression, if we will, on other people at Ponderosa in the days leading up. And maybe that is just because he is the larger individual in, amongst the tribes, and someone who probably stands out because of that. But he's certainly been noticed for sure. Did you mute yourself?
Yes, I did. I don't know how I muted myself,
I was
but
so confused. I'm like, what did I
so sorry
miss?
about that. See, this is what happens when we take a couple months off. I just,
Mhm.
not he was not noticed nearly as much as the guy who didn't make it on the show, who
Oh my
almost
gosh.
everybody had negative impressions of. So a lot of times alternates will then eventually get on to the next season.
Mhm.
So hopefully, if this guy gets onto the next season or two, he looks at all these interviews
Right.
and says, "Oh my God, I got to tone it down."
Well, and I'm curious if they would even bring him back after hearing the way that he was being perceived and described by this cast. Like, is this something that CBS would consider in the potential? Because I will say that in my season, I found out later that Jay was the alternate on
Hmm.
the season 32, and then they brought him back for 33. So I'm curious if they would consider this in making that determination whether or not to bring him back. Very interesting.
I think they probably would be like, "Wow, he makes a great impression. Let's definitely bring him back. He could cause some."
Probably. That's a
Yeah,
fair point.
yeah.
That is a fair point. I do like the fact too that Hunter, the challenge component, I think is going to be quite fun, because you did already speak to the fact that he has created challenges with his students. So he certainly is someone who is well versed in the challenge world when it
Hmm.
comes specifically to Survivor. And I also like the fact that he said he doesn't want to flame out too early, that he wants to find that balance. And so I really do appreciate the fact that he is realizing that he could be perceived as a challenge threat, but
Hmm.
he's mindful of that. And I always do like when they can see how other people might see them, because they can lean in on it, but they're
Right.
also very cognizant of the effect that it could have on their game.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we will move to Liz.
And you will hear me flipping lots of papers, everyone, because there are lots of papers right now. So this is Liz, as you did hear David say. She is 35 years old. She's a marketing strategist, and she says she is effing capable of anything. I do appreciate that. I will say that one of the interesting components about Liz, and we will be talking about Mariah as well, I feel like they do look very similar, and she
Hmm.
has acknowledged that, or at least Mariah acknowledged that. So that one was throwing me a little bit, just because there are similarities in the two. I do think that Liz has a very interesting dynamic about her, from the experiences that she's had in life, the things that she's been through. She is someone who strikes me as definitely go get him. When she says she's capable of doing anything, that's certainly what it sounds like with all of the things that she has experienced. Her life experience to me sounds like almost movie-esque. Like, does this really happen? She is currently working in marketing. She's an entrepreneur. Essentially, she wants you to check all those emails that nobody wants to check. So
Hmm.
if she has the ability to make you check an email that you don't want to, perhaps she'll be able to have some influence on people she's playing this game with, because who wants to open those spam emails? She's going to make you, according to Liz. So I do have some reservations. She does say that she's not really sure why she's here. She's here for the adventure. And I know, David, you and I have talked about this a lot. You better
Hmm.
be here to win. This is
Yes.
not an adventure is part of it, but my gosh, you better be here to win. And she sounds like she's coming from a place that is not interested in that part of this. It's almost like this is one more thing that she's going to do in her life because she's done so much. So I have some very real concerns about how that is going to affect her
Yep.
game. And she also does believe that, oh, and there's another thing that I'm concerned about. We'll get to that in a moment. But she does think she'll be very good socially. She feels like she's, very, I think Silly Shield was one of the things that she talked about. I think was that her or was that
No,
Mariah?
that
See,
was
now I
that.
can't even
Yeah, that
remember.
was not her.
That was Mariah. Okay. But she does believe socially that she's going to do well. The other concern I have with
Oh,
her,
nope, you're right. It was her. You're
it
right.
was the Silly Shield.
Yes.
Okay. So Silly Shield. Oh yes, and there is a connection here with somebody else on her tribe in that regard. So we can certainly get to that too.
Mhm.
But the eating, the food that she's so allergic to, I'm
Yes.
very, very worried for her because even though she thinks that this is going to kind of be her superpower and that other people are not going to understand, like to be hungry
Mhm.
and food scarcity, and she does, but she can't even eat coconut. I'm
Yes.
so concerned for her. I don't know what she said she's gonna eat worms, but oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
worms
I
and
definitely am
fish.
worried about that.
She can eat fish.
Fish is great.
So
Just catch fish.
right. Yeah,
Um,
that's the big issue there. Now, I wanted to add she's originally from Michigan and now Orlando. This is
mm.
important because someone else is from Orlando, and it would be
Oh,
funny if
okay, I apologize.
she said, as you mentioned, she's always loved the show, but applied because her young daughter dared her to do it.
Right.
And yeah, that is a worry when it comes to playing a winning game.
Mhm.
Um, so, and as much as I think Liz will be a fun player to watch, she also had one of the worst hot takes possible, as she said she loves Final Four fire making.
I know! Come
So
on.
it would be amusingly ironic if she got knocked out that way, but I
Mhm.
just don't feel she'll last quite that long.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Liz, but we don't like that.
No. No, we do not.
There's that component. But yes. So, but I will say though, there is someone else. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but there is someone else on her tribe that referenced her specifically as someone that he was getting a good vibe with.
Mhm.
So there might be some potential there for a budding friendship, strategic relationship. Who knows?
Okay. All right, that's what I have. Do you have anything more on her?
Nope.
Okay, then we can go to Randon, who is a 41-year-old aerospace tech, originally from Brooklyn and now Orlando, just like Liz. Uh,
Ah,
so,
I see what you did there.
yes. I love that his favorite people he'd like to meet beyond Jeff are Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku, although I believe Kaku has gone a bit cuckoo in recent years, but we won't get into that now. Randon's wife and daughter are big fans and suggested he apply. So it wasn't a dare like Liz, but it was a
Right.
suggestion. Now, they also didn't think very highly of his chances. And I believe his daughter is planning on throwing him a first out party.
I
Uh,
know.
yeah,
There's really no support
yeah.
there.
Now, I appreciate how he recognized that Jam Jam's win showed this isn't a game about challenges or fire making. Thank you. It's about relationships.
Mhm.
I would, of course, add strategy to that, but many people kind of encompass the two together when they talk about relationships.
Mm.
If he can pull that off the way he thinks he can, he'll do well. But he worries about his own first impressions, which isn't a great sign.
Yeah.
He needs to get past that.
Yeah, I definitely have some concerns with him in just the manner in which he does speak of himself and that first impression concern. He doesn't seem to be as exuberant as some of the other players
Mhm.
that are on this season. And I don't know if that's going to put him into kind of a category or a corner where he might not fit in with people because there's some personalities on this tribe.
Mhm.
The one thing he did reference though was, and I'm pretty sure he's talking about, Hunter when he was talking about this guy from, well, no, he's talking about the other contestant
Yes.
too. Never
Yeah.
mind that contestant again.
Right.
So I'm hoping that Brandon is able to get over that initial like concern, because one, if he's worried about first impressions, maybe he's going to try too hard,
Mm-hmm.
and that could certainly not bode well for him if it's coming off as not genuine. So I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of reservations just because I'm very concerned with that. That's a big hurdle to get over. And if he is being perceived in a particular way in Ponderosa, and then when he gets there, if there's still not that connection
Mm-hmm.
forming, he might have a hard time with some of the people in this tribe.
Yeah. For me, the other thing that's a bit weird is he said he would play the game most like Xander.
Yeah.
Now, nothing wrong with Xander. I like Xander, but remember, by the end of the game, everybody was like, "Yeah, we didn't try to flush the idol from Xander because we didn't care. We knew he couldn't win."
Right.
So I don't know how you model your game off of Xander in that way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just
Yes.
not really sure what that means.
And I'm not getting a Xander vibe from him either. And I
No.
know that sometimes people say they want to play like that person, and they say that, and I think, oh, that makes sense. I can see that. I
Hmm.
don't get that vibe from him. Honestly, I was feeling like he is one of the people that's not like shining bright amongst this group, and I feel like Xander when he came out had
Hmm.
that type of shine to him. So maybe it'll all fall into place with Randon, but I certainly have some concerns just out of the gate how he's going to be perceived.
Okay. All right. Next up.
Is Soda. Soda is 27 years old. She is a special education teacher, and she is from, well, her hometown is Long Island, New York. She's a New York girl, and she is currently living in New Jersey. She does describe herself as intentional, determined, and empathetic, and she is deadly afraid of butterflies. This is a two-parter for me. We've talked
Uh-oh.
about the butterfly effect already, right?
You
So
you've
there's
just killed her already, haven't you?
I'm just saying, she's
Because
mentioning butterflies.
mhm.
This is problematic. And also, as someone who has been to Fiji, there's a whole lot of butterflies. I'm just telling you. And there is one type of butterfly in particular that I saw everywhere. So I hope everything worked out for Soda in regards to the butterfly concern and with the butterfly effect that I bring to this game. But I will say that there is a lot about Soda that I think is going to be very interesting and I think great for this game. She does talk about Marianne and how similar she feels that she will be like Marianne
Mhm.
in her ability to just be sociable and likable and laugh a lot and just kind of be effervescent and having a good time. I think that's going to come across very well. Also, she is, as a teacher, I think she has a lot of ability to connect with individuals. She has just kind of dove into her teaching and has really become who she is. And it sounds like she is definitely utilizing the skills that she has learned from teaching and is going to bring them into this game to connect with people. There was just so many things about her that just kind of listening to her speak, I feel like she has a good understanding of herself and what she thinks that she can bring to this game. But I really think most importantly, it's going to be her social skills. I really do see her as being someone who can connect with a lot of people in a lot of different ways and will be very cognizant of other people's feelings in the process and knowing how to circumvent any potential issues with that person throughout that process.
So the biggest problem I'm going to have with Soda is that anytime I see Soda, I say Pop because I don't call it Soda. So I'll just be calling her Pop. I'm sorry. That's it. She's been watching for about 4 years, has binged every season since, and she enjoys talking about the show from her couch, which, as you can see every week, speaks to me. But it's not clear if she talks to other people about it to get those different perspectives, or she's just like me watching a football game yelling at the screen. Um,
Yeah.
Soda says she won't make emotional decisions, but will use emotions to get information, which is great in terms of the fourth rule.
Mm-hmm.
And she, knows and emphasized it's a game, which will help separate those emotions. So those are good things also.
Yes, and I do love that she believes she has SODAR, which is quite fun.
Yes.
I like that
Yes.
that's her term she has coined for how she's able to read people.
Yes. All right. Well, we can move on to Tevin. He is a 24-year-old actor from Virginia. Now, I liked Tevin from the moment I saw him on the initial commercials for this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think his personality is infectious. Being an actor, he is trained and experienced in connecting with an audience. I mean, he worries that people will have a negative perception of him because he's flamboyant, slender, and sing-songy. So they'll think
Mm.
he's weak and not competitive, but he wants them to underestimate him. I just hope they don't underestimate him too soon, or they might get rid of him right away. Um, that's a bit of a concern when people say, I'm okay with being underestimated.
Yeah, I just really wish he could have been on, and I know there's not one, but a red tribe, just because of the Heather Chandler. Like if Heather Chandler is like his dream like actual
Mm-hmm.
character that he'd love to play on Broadway was Heather
Oh,
Chandler.
okay.
Yes,
I have
and I
no
just
idea who that is. So,
oh my God. Heathers? Come on. Listen, you need to
yeah.
watch this movie. Heathers is fantastic. And Heather Chandler is the top Heather, and her favorite color is red. And no one else is allowed to wear red because that's Heather's color. But all of her friends are named Heather except one. There's a whole thing there. But anyway, Heather Chandler, there's a weird connection with another one of the people on his tribe, which I will get to. But I was just in my head thinking, how fun would it be if he was actually on a red tribe? But yes, he does seem to be concerned that people are going to underestimate him. However, he was the one who referenced Liz as Little Shambo because of the
Oh,
headband.
okay. Yes.
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 So I thought that was interesting because she's looking for her silly shield, and maybe this is it. I mean, he's definitely got a personality. He is an actor, and he's certainly very sure of himself. I think if
Hmm.
anything, he will probably connect with people pretty quickly because he's not going to hold himself back. And perhaps that will work very well with Liz. He seems to be having a good vibe with her so far. I don't know if that vibe will continue on the island, but that was an interesting nexus that I saw as well.
Yeah. I was just checking, in case you saw me looking down a little bit. I was checking to make sure I remembered something right, and I did, in fact, remember it right. So I'm happy about that. But Tevin has been watching since he was really young, and he
Mm.
knows not to tell people he's an actor. So he'll just say he's a singer, which is also true. Um,
Hmm.
he's listened to at least some podcasts. We're not sure which. Um, because he referenced one in his hot take, which we, of course, don't consider to be a hot take, because he said that the Final Four fire making has devalued the final immunity challenge, and he doesn't like the thought process that people need to make fire. As he said, no, I won the final immunity challenge. I earned this. Y'all go to fire. I'll see y'all in final three. And I mean, that could have, other than the y'alls, that could have come directly out of our mouths.
Yes, I appreciate that view. Thank you, Tevin. There's someone else that you might need to talk to about that Final
Mm,
Four fire making who you
yes.
might already feel like you have a vibe with. Just saying.
Yeah, that's going to cause their split. They're going to get into a big argument about Final Four fire making and go after each other
Any of these
because of
little
that.
connections that you can find
Yeah.
between people.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, we can move on.
To Venus.
Hmm.
So, Venus is a 24-year-old data analyst. She is, or described herself as passionate, persistent, and sassy. She is from Ontario originally. She still lives in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And she is, interestingly enough, someone who likes to describe herself as Regina George from Mean Girls. And this is where
Ah,
the Heather Chandler thing comes. I was like, this is like my dream duo is Heather Chandler and Regina George. I love this combo. So I don't know if maybe they'll both kind of share that with each other, but it would
mm,
be lovely if they did. I will say that there is quite a few things about Venus that kind of stick out. In addition to, I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to be mean. She has got some big feet. I'm just saying that photo, you can't see it on the second half because the Rob is covering it. But that was one thing I noticed. I'm like, wow, she definitely has some big feet. But
maybe that'll help her win a pole challenge.
But this is why I have to point it out,
yeah.
right? Because we all noticed Dee Dee's big toe, or I should say Dee's big toe. I don't know if maybe that will help her in any of the challenges, but it's something that certainly can be a consideration now because we've seen it happen
That's right.
in previous seasons. So I think as far as she is concerned, I love this part. And a lot of individuals come out here when they're asked, who do you feel like you're going to play the game like? Who do you feel like you're most similar to in the world of Survivor? And she spoke about Parvati. Now, that's a big, big person, right? I mean, Parvati is someone that everyone knows and the personality, and there's so many things about her. Most of the time when I hear that comparison, I think, no, you're not Parvati. I get Parvati from her just in the way that she speaks, the way that she presents herself, the way that she wants to think about the game. Everything that she was speaking of, I was like, wow, she really does remind me of Parvati. So I can actually see that with her, and I don't normally see that connection when anyone wants to equate themselves to Parvati. So if she can pull it off, amazing, because we've all seen what Parvati can do. I mean, she's just incredible at this game. And it would be very interesting to see if we have a second individual that can pull off a game similar to something like Parvati did. And also, she, I believe, described Hunter as someone that she would like to be connected with. So that was very interesting. And Soda described Venus as someone that she wants to connect with. So I don't know if maybe we'll end up with that duo here, but I thought that was an interesting little, mix that could come together.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I'm not sure. I worry about her, but there's a lot about her that's positive. One of her favorite hobbies is playing poker, but then it was never mentioned again any other time. It's just listed and that's it. Like many others, she started watching in the early part of the pandemic, but she watched from the beginning. She didn't just, bounce around or anything. She went all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
And saw how it evolved. And she said her favorite moment was Rob Sesternino turning things on Christy in the Amazon
I
when
know, it's
she
so
was in the
good.
middle and wouldn't commit, which of course is the poster picture for, see if I can get this in there. No, you can't really see it, but for rule 2 about scheming and plotting too much. Now, she talked about the need to stay calm and talk your way out of difficult situations and gave a rather harrowing example of being stopped by the morality police in Iran
Right?
and doing just that. And as she said, if she could stay calm under those circumstances, she could do it on Survivor. But she worries people have a negative first impression of her, so she's going to have to turn them around quickly. Now, from what you've said, it sounds like maybe some people already have a good first impression and she can get past that. But she is, in her own words, apparently other than her feet, a tiny girl. And, this could be a problem if her tribe loses early. But Venus talked about being very logical and systematic in her decision making, which of course I like. She even said she had a checklist in her mind, and much like the version of the checklist on our checklist T-shirts,
Exactly.
or in my case, on my mug. And so, when it comes to the strategic part of the game, she'll use that type of strategy. I also really liked Venus's answer to Mike's question about whether she'd go on a journey very early. She said she'd try to send someone she wants to screw over a bit, and noted that your vote is your voice in the game and she doesn't want to risk losing it. Again, go Venus.
Yes.
My favorite line is, I don't want to throw someone under the bus, but I would take a step back and let them get hit by it.
This is very Regina George. Well, although Regina George got hit by the bus, but regardless.
And this also goes along with her saying she plans to play hard, even if it means being a villain. So yeah, there's a
Oh, and
lot.
she wanted to invite villains back. She's like, "Why don't we
Right.
have more villains? Like,
Yeah.
why are people so opposed?" I thought that was lovely as well.
So with that, we can get to our prediction about who we think the first out will be.
Mm,
And I hate to say it, but I do worry Venus could be first out if they lose early and she doesn't have time to get past those first impressions that she thinks she'll make.
yeah.
So the question is, can she get in good with those people and to the point of protecting her? And if she can, then who else would go? Would it be Soda? Would it be Randon? I mean, it could be Liz. I don't know. It just a lot of it depends on how these folks are thinking about it. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, I'm
I think
sorry. Go
Tevin
ahead.
and Hunter will go far. I just don't know about the rest.
Well, and I feel like when I'm looking at this group and knowing what they've said about each other,
Hmm.
the only person who seems to be on the outs is Randon, just because there is that one. We've got Soda who was
Yeah.
interested in Venus, and then you've got Venus who is interested in Hunter. And if they do come together, and then you have Tevin and who is already referenced
Hmm.
Liz. And I feel like if someone has already made a decision, if you will, when they were at Ponderosa about a particular individual, they will be more inclined to want to try to get to know that person. So there isn't going to be any, I think, initial
Hmm.
awkwardness when they're on the island. Because if Soda's like, I want to meet that girl, I need to talk to
Right.
that girl, they're going to have that moment to connect. And I'm hoping that just listening to the way that Venus speaks of the game, she seems to be very survivor savvy. Like, she seems to
Hmm.
understand the nuances of the game, which I really appreciate. And she seems to be having a better direction, which brings me back over to Liz, because even if Liz and Tevin connect, if Liz is really just kind of aloof and just there for the adventure, maybe Tevin doesn't want to tie himself to
Right.
that type of player because it might not be beneficial to him. So I'm leaning more towards, Randon being someone who might be on the outs because of that first
Hmm.
impression that he might provide. And then, potentially Liz, if Tevin doesn't really grab hold of her and say, "Let's
Hmm.
go," I feel like Liz could be someone that could find herself out at the, one of the first votes
Right.
as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we can move along now to the Siga tribe. They are in green, of course. And we begin with Ben, a 31-year-old
Mm,
year old musician and music teacher in Miami. Now, I expect Ben to be quite a character on the show for however long he's there. And indeed, he, said in his interview that he turned down opportunities to do other quote unquote reality TV projects. Uh,
mhm.
of course, being a character doesn't necessarily equate to playing a winning game. Usually doesn't. Uh,
No.
he's been watching for about 5 or 6 years and said he's binged a good chunk of it. But I
Mm,
feel like, and this is just my read, that he watched it more for the characters than the strategy. And that
yes.
worries me.
Mhm.
He also talked about sitting back and being like, okay, not going to attach myself to the outcome. That's the downfall of life. Trust that who I am in this moment is going to open the door it needs to open. And then he
Mm,
later added, the game's the personal jury, which also worries me for his game because no, it's the game is not the personal journey. If you want to have a personal journey, well, fine, but that's different from the game.
right.
And
You need to play the game
right, we're
during
here to
the
talk about
journey.
playing the game.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so I
Yeah.
worry he won't have his eyes on the prize in terms of following a number of the rules.
Yeah, I definitely have some concerns. I do think Ben is going to be a character for sure. And he does describe himself as the real life Jack Black. And he is certainly an interesting person. He's had quite the life, and I do think that the life experiences can help people
Mm-hmm.
in this game. But I feel like his approach to life is what could potentially backfire for him in this game, because it is very free spirit and is very kind of exciting, and what he wants to do. And he has a lot of, he's very, very motivated, which I think is lovely. And he does describe himself as energized and passionate. but he also is someone who has been kind of given opportunities because of his talents, which
Hmm.
is fantastic. But there are certain things that can carry over into Survivor very well. And though you might have certain talents, there needs to be like a strategy component that he doesn't seem to be addressing at all when he's talking about the game of Survivor. So I do also have some concerns for how he's going to actually play the game as opposed to experiencing the
Hmm.
game.
Yeah. Now, I was glad to see him recognize that advantages these days can be more of a curse than a blessing, and he's at least going to
Mhm.
consider options rather than immediately going for them, because he said no risk, no reward, but a risk can bring you to your end too.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember.
Mhm.
All right, then we can move on.
I just dropped a paper.
Oh
I will need it.
no.
I will get the paper later. We are now talking about Charlie. Charlie is 26 years old. He is a law student currently residing in Boston, Massachusetts. He describes himself as loyal, funny, and fun, loving, and competitive. He is someone who is in love with Spencer. Just throw that out there too. He's a big Spencer fan, as I think most people, well, a lot of people love Spencer, and also Christian Hubicki, someone else that I think is someone that's very well known and well appreciated in the Survivor world. He does seem to be a more recent survivor or watcher of Survivor. I mean, he's gone through all of the seasons. I do believe he went through all of them, but he is another pandemic watcher. I will say there are so many people on this cast that were like, well, I kind of fell into Survivor
Hmm.
during the pandemic and then was like, I'm just going to binge everything. So I do have some concerns that he is newer to the game. He's also younger, but a lot of the people on this cast seem younger. When the oldest player, I think, is 47. So this is
Yeah.
definitely a very young cast. I do appreciate the fact that he's interested in not just the win, but the money,
Yes.
because I think that those two things should be a consideration because they do go hand in hand. And also his description of being a long distance runner and how it's going to help him through the game, I thought was a really interesting one because he did say that to succeed in running, you have to get in the zone where you are just in so much pain and then you just keep going. And I
Hmm.
thought that was really poignant because that is what Survivor truly turns into, where you are just at wit's end, you are just in so much pain, so uncomfortable, and do you have something inside of you to keep going, to keep moving forward. So I think that that is a really good analogy, and I'm hoping that that works for him because if you do have that place within yourself that you can go to and because you've been there,
Hmm.
I think that that's something that will definitely benefit him. He does not plan on telling people that he is in law school. I think he said he was going to be a paralegal, which is
Yeah.
somewhat similar, and described his kryptonite as becoming or become if he gets too enchanted by one
Hmm.
alliance partner, which I thought was interesting. So he might struggle a little bit with that move that we so many people talk about, Jesse and Cody, when you gotta
Hmm.
like make that decision to cut your number one. He might have a little bit of trouble with that. So I am
Yeah.
concerned with how he's going to manage that while he's on the island.
Yeah. I think he's an interesting mix. I had some good feelings about him from his bio, but then his interview made me more worried. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he loves board games and debating, both of which may come in handy on Survivor. Uh, you know, but he said that, and this will absolutely get him in trouble if he does it. He said, I think and I hope I can use tribal as a sort of weapon as well. In the right
Mm,
moments, at the right times, you can sort of get people a little flustered in a way that they wouldn't have expected. Turn something
yeah.
around, a question Jeff asks us, pin it on someone else. Take someone's random analogy or your obfuscating answer and say, oh, who are you talking about right now?
Yeah.
When
That's
you said someone's driving the bus, name them. Name who you think is in charge. Just finding moments where if your back's against the wall, trying to turn up the heat a little bit. And
all you're doing is turning
yeah,
the heat up on yourself in that moment. That's what you're
exactly.
doing. Yeah.
Because we know most of tribal council is meaningless these days.
Mhm.
And even if it's not, the last thing you want to do is call people out when they're about to vote.
Yes,
I
right.
mean, it's like people could come in there with a plan and then you start calling them out. And they're going to be like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Mhm.
And even
Yeah.
if it doesn't happen in that vote, it can have ramifications echoing later.
Oh, certainly, because then they could come back and call and be like, "What were you
Right.
doing? Why did you do
Right.
that? We
Yeah.
had a plan." Yeah. I could definitely see that being a problem.
Yeah. I also worry because Charlie himself said people might think he's arrogant or cocky. And he didn't talk about how he planned to counter it in terms of the fifth rule.
Yeah.
And then the worst thing that he said was there's no set criteria you can check off to win. There's no objective way to win Survivor. So, Charlie, we're going to have a little talk here.
I think he needs a poster.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
There might just be a checklist. Somebody already talked about it, and there was a
Yes.
mug that was displayed.
Right. Yes. Charlie.
Oh,
All right.
Charlie.
Yeah. Well, we can move on to Jem, who is 32, originally from Guyana. I think I pronounced that right. And now in Chicago. So, yay.
Yes.
Her husband is a Survivor superfan who introduced her to the show early in the pandemic. She's a retail manager in charge of 2 stores, but she doesn't plan to tell people about her sales experience because, sales people.
Salespeople.
Jem had an interesting take that she has skills to be a provider from her own youth living in similar conditions, but doesn't want to necessarily play that role because she thinks it would put a target on her. Now, it's good that she's thinking about not being too much of a threat, but I have to admit, I don't fully understand how getting coconuts or fishing would make her a threat.
No, people would love it if she got coconuts.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Or fish. That would be
Yeah.
great. Be a provider. It's okay to be a provider.
Yeah.
And I understand the hesitation because you can't make that your entire shtick. That can't be all you do is I'm the provider and look at me and I'm providing for everyone, because then that just becomes annoying.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with collecting some coconuts or catching a fish or two. Like, that's fine. And people, I'm sure, would appreciate some food. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think that's a problem.
Yeah. Now, some of the things she said about her plans sound good at first, but maybe not fully upon further analysis, such as how she doesn't intend to be the one making all the big moves, but rather she'll be helping and have the idea, but let other people do it. That way, if she's at the end, she could take credit for them. Now, this is good, but it doesn't really explain that another reason to do this is the people making the big moves are often targeted, as we discuss frequently. And of course, we've had people in the past try to take credit for moves and they've been rejected at Final Tribal Council because they weren't seen doing it.
Right.
So that's going to be tough to overcome, especially since she further explained it would be more like planting seeds. Instead of saying, let's vote this person out, talk about how strong they are and how they would win at the end. Well, okay, if you just start talking about that, and then you get to the end and say, I'm the one who caused that person to be voted out, someone's going to turn to her and say, no, you didn't. And, so that worries me.
Yeah.
She also talked about being very loyal. And when she says she trusts someone, she's not going to break. But the thing is, in almost every situation, you have to break at some point. And, she seemed to acknowledge it later in her interview, but I'm not sure how it would all play out given the contradictions.
Yeah, I was definitely struggling with her just because I feel like she has a lot of qualities, but I don't know how well they are going to carry over into the game. The sales thing, I think, is an interesting concept because it seems to have kind of been blown out of proportion because of what we saw Cody do with the salesperson. I wouldn't imagine playing this game and someone said, "Oh, I run 2 retail stores," that I would be like, "Ooh, now I have to be worried." So I don't anticipate that being as problematic as describing yourself as an international brand ambassador. Like, that to me sounds more aggressive. Like, to say that that's what you do, as opposed to, I work at a couple of retail stores. Like, you can minimize. I'm not saying that I'm not minimizing what she does, but she could minimize what she does. But now she's saying she's an international brand ambassador. That sounds like, I'd be like, whoa, what is that? Like, please explain, because that really sounds like a lot. So I feel like maybe she could be trying too hard to hide something that's not necessarily or just not necessary.
Right.
She doesn't need
Right.
to hide that.
Right.
And that might affect her ability to play the game. I also find it interesting. She's another one of there's I think at least 3 on the cast whose spouses were the
Yes.
ones who loved the show and they didn't. And so she's now playing this game that her spouse was the one who really found and introduced
Right.
her to. So I just don't know if she's going to have as much of the not I don't want to say interest, but just the appreciation for the game as much as some of the other players who are more entrenched in Survivor
Hmm.
itself than she would be.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could move on.
To Maria.
Hmm.
Maria is 48 years old. She is from Dallas, Texas. Her occupation is a parent coach, but she's also or was a doctor of physical therapy. I don't know if she's still both. I can't remember. It sounded like she was only a parent coach, but also
Yes.
but we can talk about that in just a moment. She describes herself as determined, loyal, and resilient. She is someone who the parent coach thing I think is interesting. She actually coaches parents how to be
Mm.
parents. So
Yeah.
like it is actually what it sounds like, which I didn't know that that was a thing.
I didn't
But
either. And I feel like I have known people over the years who could have used a parent coach, but the problem is none of those people would have gotten a parent coach.
right,
Like
like
the
how do you
people
know
who
you need a
most
parent
the
coach?
people who most need it would not seek out a parent coach.
Yeah, I
It, it
agree.
it it feels like one of those things. Like if you recognize that there's an issue, you're already a good portion of the way there. But I guess there are some people who recognize I could do better, and they seek her out.
Well, and she can definitely be your parent coach. I what I find to be incredibly fascinating about Maria is she is like it sounds like she's at 100 all the time with everything that she does. It's like she is not living life at a minimum ever. It is like full tilt. And I know that that's a term
Hotel
that's
boogie.
yeah, full tilt boogie, but it definitely seems like her entire existence is that way, that this is the way her life is. And I don't know if she's going to come across as intimidating and like a lot to the other tribe members. I didn't necessarily feel that when she was speaking in her interview, but just listening to her talk about her existence and the things that she's accomplished and the thing that she's done throughout her existence. I just this woman just she just runs marathons and just everything that she does is like it's bigger, better
Mhm.
than everyone. And I feel like that could potentially have a negative impact on people if she comes across as being too much, too quick, too soon, but maybe she won't. But she is very determined. I mean, one of the things she says is like her superpower is like just watch me. If I put my mind to something, it's going to
Mhm.
happen, which is great to feel that way. But you also need to recognize that that can come across as being too much when you're
Yeah.
playing this game. So she
Yeah.
might need to pull back a little bit and let things kind of fall into place instead of maybe taking over and trying to run things right off the rip.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you mentioned it. I don't remember, but she is the oldest player this season,
Yes, she
and
is.
not old at all. I think she was 47 when she played, 48 now.
Hmm.
She worried it would make her a target, so she dyed her hair. And while it's unfortunate she had to do that, it's also smart. Um, Within the game, she wants to pair up with another woman and run the game like Wendell and Dom or Jesse and Cody until she cuts them, of course, which she says
Mm,
she's willing to do. Um, Maria is one of the people this time who has watched for a long time and
yes.
originally applied 20 years ago. She also plays Mafia and likes strategic gameplay, but that's about all we heard about strategy. Those two
Hmm.
things that I mentioned, besides wanting, to team up in a duo. So it doesn't give us a whole lot to go on in terms of being able to judge how things will go.
Well, I will say the fact that she was so adamant with the, day two
Hmm.
journey, she's like, I'm going. Like that was what she was. No hesitation, I'm going. And this is
Yeah.
what my concern is with her is that
Right.
there is going to be this need to just do everything immediately, quickly, without pausing and thinking, how is this going to affect? So that type of answer makes me very nervous, because I
Mhm.
think that should bring about some pause. And I think a lot of the other answers we heard in regards to that particular question, there was a lot of reflection, and people were saying, well, there's benefits and there's also
Right.
huge problems that come with that and how you will be perceived. She was just like, I'm going. So
All right. So we just had Maria. Now we will move to Mariah.
like,
Um,
really, why did they do this?
yeah.
They put
Well,
Maria and Mariah on the
I
same
will
tribe.
say on Twitter she is Mo.
Mo.
So maybe, maybe she's Mo on the show as well. She is 28, a program coordinator from Florida, now in San Diego. Mo, I'll just call her Mo for now, says she's the type of person to organize and plan things. And I wonder if that will carry over to Survivor, hopefully in a good way. She
Mhm.
said she's a super fan who began watching in Karamoan and then went back to watch the earlier seasons, and then, of course, all of them since then. Mo calls herself a nerd, but a very social nerd. She's
Mhm.
trying to play down the first part so she doesn't become a target as far as being seen as both smart and social. So, she probably won't talk about the fact that she read a bunch of strategy books to prepare, for example, but I
Mhm.
like. Uh,
Mhm.
I found her response to one question Mike asked particularly good because it reminds me of something I used to do at work too. It's about what's most applicable between her job and Survivor. And she said, I think something called subtle influence. I work with people much higher than me on the ladder in my daily job. I can't go to the mayor and say, Mayor, sign this. That just doesn't work. So the way around that is talking to someone, getting your alliance member in real life to maybe broach it, knowing where people stand, understanding how people in relationships form, uh,
Mhm.
using that to my advantage. And that's something I've practiced figuring out. If I want someone to do something, maybe the best way is not for me to ask them. Now, I've said before that many of my rules apply outside of Survivor in the real world as well. And I have definitely used them in ways similar to what Mo described here when I was working, which was also in government.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, the one thing I'm worried about within Survivor for her, though, is it sounds a little like what Jem described. And my concern about what she said applies here as well. If you make it to the end, you need to be able to claim those moves. You can't just use your influence and then later circle back and say, hey, that was all me, because
Right.
people are
Yeah.
not going to believe you.
Right. I do feel like, though, there's a chance that she might come at it a little bit differently, because it sounds like she understands how nuanced it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious if she's going to be able to plant those seeds, but then build upon them in order to then, continue the game in the direction that she wants. Some of the players that we've seen win as of late have not had those big types of games, and I'm wondering if she's going to be able to find that balance, because she's at least comes across as someone who is rather savvy when it comes to her ability to think things through. And I know you already talked about the games that she
Mm-hmm.
plays, where she does have to come up with like the final outcome, if you will, of how she wants to get. Like she said, you need to be thinking 4 or 5 moves ahead
Right.
in order to like potentially win a game. And so I think that might bode well for her. But I do think that she did say that her Achilles heel is going to be her overthinking. So that might work against her then. If she
Right.
has this, like, I need to be thinking 4 or 5 moves ahead, and she's doing that, but then she might put herself in a bad situation because she's overthinking it.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a blessing, it could be a curse.
Yeah. Yeah, as someone who overthinks, I completely agree. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm with you there too,
yeah,
Mo. I am definitely
yeah.
with you there.
Now, Mo did say her biggest strength will be her flexibility, which of course is good for the third rule. So we'll see how that goes.
Yes.
But after Maria and Mariah, we have someone whose name is not at all similar.
Oh, this is me,
It
Tim.
is you,
All right,
yes.
and not me, but I'm
Not you,
introducing
yeah.
Tim. Yeah, so Tim is 31 years old. He currently lives in Georgia. He lived in Virginia prior to. He
Hmm.
is a college coach. He describes himself as goal oriented, charismatic, team player, strategic thinker. So these are all things that you think would work well in Survivor, right?
Yes.
I do think that he has a very interesting way about him and how he just kind of describes himself and things that he I there was something very captivating about him just listening to him speak and how he approaches things. One of the things that he spoke about was he doesn't want to be a wagon, which I thought was great. I kind of
Yes.
like that in relationship to Survivor, that he didn't want to be a wagon. But he also is like this very interesting mix of a person. I know that that sounds weird, but I think he's going to be enchanting. I really do. I think he's going to just kind of be someone who, when he's speaking to individuals on the tribe, they're just going to be interested just because of the way that he presents himself. And I do think that I'm trying to remember when oh, is he the one that did he just apply once and then I know there was a few of
I
them that
don't
just
know. I
applied
don't have
once.
all the notes like that.
Yeah,
So,
I have all my pages of notes as
yes.
I flip through.
Yes.
But I am intrigued to see how he is going to play the game because he does focus on some interesting components relative to the game. You know, he talks about Gabler a little bit and
Mhm.
Jesse and Cody and how that relationship worked. So I he's like, I don't know. I feel a certain way about him and I'm struggling to describe the best way to explain how I feel about him. But there's something very, very intriguing about Tim for sure.
I have a lot of I don't know also because, like, his history of watching is a little vague, as he just said, when he got older, he saw the cutthroatness, challenges in swimming. And I'm glad he
Mm.
listed cutthroatness first, which, by the way, great word, cutthroatness. Um, but it worries me that he focused more on talking about how he can really swim. I mean, yes, that's good. You'll need
Right.
swimming in some challenges. It's not the core of the game.
Right.
Um, you know, I did like what you mentioned about how one of his favorite moments was more about strategy, the Gabler Jesse Cody thing.
Yes.
Um, and I was also impressed by the way he discussed wanting to align with someone who is just outside a core group because it's smart to use someone like that to shake things up through the promise of bettering their position. And he
Mm-hmm.
indicated he would be willing to cut an ally and not take everybody with him. Therefore, like you said, don't be a wagon.
Yeah.
I just don't have much more to say about him. I don't know.
I know he's there's just like almost
Yeah.
like an enigma. There's
Yeah.
like he was very interesting to listen to. And he just in the way that he would describe things, but and also his perceptions of people and how he
Mhm.
described what he saw them doing at Ponderosa and what kind of thoughts he had about them. Like I did think it was very interesting how he was talking about people like putting themselves out there. He's like, I already know who's good at puzzles because they're sitting here reading puzzle books.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you don't have that in your mind already, like if you don't already know these things, then now's too late to be learning it. He's like, I'm reading books like How to Win Friends and Influence
Mhm.
People, but I'm doing that in my I would
Right.
call it tent. I don't remember what word he used,
Yeah.
but he's not presenting those parts of himself, which also will lend to that enigma, like what is this guy all about, because he's not doing the same types of things that we
Mhm.
might see other people doing who are reading puzzle books or these
Right.
particular types of leadership books in front of individuals. So I thought that was very interesting that he was making note of that as well, and because I don't think that people really realize how significant your behaviors in the days leading up to the game
Mhm.
can influence what people think about you when you start the game. So
Yeah.
the fact that he was making note of that, I think is at least he's paying attention for sure.
Yeah. So for as far as our tribal prediction for who is out first,
Oh
this is
yes.
this is a tough one for me. I think Ben could actually get himself voted out first from this tribe.
Mm,
But so could Charlie if he immediately starts with his tribal council plan. Um, I will go with Ben. As crazy as that sounds, based purely on, keep the strong around, it probably shouldn't be him, but I just I don't know that people will warm to Ben that much.
yeah,
Um,
and I feel like part of Ben's potential problem is going to be the perception and the love that has come with some more exuberant characters that we've seen as of
Hmm.
late, and that if he is someone who is a character, that might be something that is seen as a threat, like, oh well,
Right.
he's going to be someone that people will just end up loving because he's enjoyable and he's fun to be around. And but if he's not bringing any strategy to the game, I can also see that being an issue for him. And I'm still worried about Maria as well, just
Hmm.
because of that. If she comes out full force, like I'm worried she might, then that could potentially be an issue for her. So I do think that I think Ben is going to be in a tough spot, but I also think that Ben might just be more. I don't know if people will love him or be frustrated with him
Yes.
right
Yes.
away. And
That's
so,
the hard thing to predict. Yeah.
right, that is
So
definitely a hard thing to predict. But I think if I'd have to pick between the two, I do have I do have my concerns for Ben.
yeah.
I share in that concern for Ben.
Yeah. As far as doing well, I think Mariah Mo will do well from this tribe.
Mhm. I think she's like, there's just, again, there's something about her, and
Hmm.
that just kind of speaks to a lot of people. I think that she can connect with
Yeah.
people very well, and I think she's just, there's just something about her as well. Like Tim, I think, has that same thing, that type of energy. So I think Mo is definitely going to do well. I'm
Okay.
not as sold on this tribe as the
Yeah.
first tribe we
Yeah.
talked about. I have some real concerns for this group here for Siga. I don't know if it's going to go well for them. Well, because I'm not even seeing real connections. Like the other
Right.
tribe was
Right.
kind of easy to find those connections. And in looking at this group, I'm struggling with who is actually going to come together and connect the most right away.
Hmm.
And I mean, so it's very hard to tell just from what we know, what little we know about them,
Right.
who's going to actually form a good bond on this group.
Yeah. All right. We can move on to the Yanu tribe. They are in purple. So there is the Yanu tribe. Um,
There it is.
and we will start with Banu from Yanu. Um, he is 41, an IT quality analyst, originally from India, now in Massachusetts. Banu said he's very good at making first impressions and added he's a very people person, both of which will be very helpful here if he can, bring that to the table. Adding to that, he says his biggest superpower is reading people. So if he can both read people and make as good a first impression as he thinks, he'll be giving himself a great advantage.
Mm,
Uh, Banu first saw Kagian and then watched more. He said his husband George is the super fan, so another one, spousal super fan. I have to wonder how much influence that will have on him. Like, will
mm.
he be thinking, "What would George do?" But he himself is enough of a fan that he had shoulder surgery just to be on the show. So
I know, but that's so nerve-wracking too,
yes,
right?
yes. Um, now Banu said because of his background, backstabbing doesn't come naturally to him, but he noted this is a game and he just has to play. So I'm hoping that he can do that. Uh,
Yeah.
but the one statement in his interview that gives me the most pause is when he said, I always say, even in my casting interviews, that Jeff Probst has been my guru. And as my guru quoted, there's only one winner. Most of us are either going home or are on the jury. I want to play the game. Whatever falls in my lap, I just want to take it and I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to ride the tide. That's my strategy. And we have said
I
many
don't love
times,
that.
yeah, we've said many times, taking strategy advice from Jeff is a terrible idea because Jeff pushes things that make a more exciting TV show, but often poor gameplay. Um,
Yeah.
and Banu later expanded on this to focus on things Jeff says, like dig deep, don't give up. Well, that's fine, but I'm still worried, especially with how much Banu likes Jeff's podcast and his responses to the "This is why Jeff sucks" segment, which we've discussed here on multiple occasions. But Banu loves his responses there. We generally don't. Um, and compounding that is he said he can't lie. I'm hoping he meant in real life, but we'll see.
Yeah. I do appreciate the background that he described and how that's going to help him in the game, because he said we never grew up crushing people's hearts
Right.
because we all grew up on the streets. And so I do think that that's going to give him a different perspective to look at the game, but it also might be that much more difficult for him to crush people's hearts because
Mhm.
he's uh, not that we all do it every single day, but I feel
Speak
like
for
he might
yourself.
struggle. So he might struggle with that because he did say we're all in it together, so we're all helping each other out. But he does realize it's a game. I hope that he is able to take those two things and realize that yes, this is a game and you will
Mhm.
have to crush people's hearts and that he won't struggle. But I share some of the same concerns that you have, is that he this kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of gameplay is
Mhm.
not something that I think is necessarily going to work. Now, I will say that a lot of times we've talked about how people who come into the game with too much of a plan is also a problem,
Right.
because you have to be flexible and you have to be able to you do have to be able to shift and move as the game shifts and moves. But his seems much more like it's constantly just going to be
Mhm.
moving, and it's not like I'm going to have a plan that then requires me to be flexible. So I do have some concerns for him as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can move on to our last name contestant here.
Jelinski.
Yes. Also
Oh,
David.
Jelinski.
Let's be, let's be
He is a
clear now.
David.
He is a
He is
David.
definitely a David, but he doesn't want to be known as a David.
And I
David.
mean, I understand that because there are so many Davids. And he
There are
says it
so many
himself
Davids.
that in everyday life, when I go to play poker, people never called me David. They always called me Bloomberg because there
Right.
were at least three other Davids in there. And every other
Mm-hmm.
one had their own, either went by their last names or a nickname or something like that. So
I
I
will
totally
say that
understand.
everyone who I associate with that knows of you, they all call you Bloomberg.
Mm.
so, so you are Bloomberg in Jessica's world, just so you know.
Yeah.
So now we have a Jelinski. Jelinski is 22 years old. He lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he is a slot machine salesman, which is fascinating.
Hmm.
I love that he said one of his favorite hobbies is bowling. I just wanted to throw that in there because that's so much fun. This I thought was incredible. My closest friends would say that David Jelinski thinks he knows everything, is too smart for his own good, and describes himself as a hothead, which might not go very well in the
Yeah.
game of Survivor. Being a hothead might not work for you. I think it's interesting that he was a Big Brother fan, and
Hmm.
that's how he ended up finding Survivor. I'm curious if, I mean, he crammed Survivor. He
Yes.
watched all of Survivor, but he was a Big Brother fan first. And let's see. So he's had a very interesting upbringing, and
Mm.
I'm going to echo some of the same sentiments I've already said, that sometimes when you have a difficult upbringing, that can definitely affect how you approach life. And I think it has created in him a passion to like really push himself and to move forward and to be
Hmm.
successful and make really difficult decisions. I believe he dropped out of school so he could start a business, and he seems very successful in what he's doing. And so he might be the type of person that when he's playing this game is willing to make those tough decisions and willing to make, you know, make more tough decisions than I think Banu would make, because it seemed like he doesn't want to crush people's hearts, where I feel like Jelinski's going to. He's
Yeah.
definitely going to be willing to crush people's hearts.
Yeah. I don't think he
Sure.
started a business. He went into a business with someone, or he's working for someone his mother knew, I believe.
Okay, so
Um,
that's what it is. But
yeah.
he turned it into something. Oh yeah.
Right.
So yep, they were
Right.
mutual friends.
Yeah.
So I do think that he's pursuing gaming management and
Right.
international business as well. So he
Right.
he certainly seems to be someone who is a go-getter and really wants to, play this game. I mean, he described his superpower as being adaptive, which I think
Yeah.
is incredible. So I mean, I'm hoping that will lend into him being flexible, and that he will be willing to move about the game in a way that works for the perception that he's going to have from others in this game, because he knows what he presents
Right.
as. I mean, he is someone who he thinks people will think is personable. And I feel like I feel like he's going to do, well, again, I'm torn. He wants someone who's unbelievably nice to a fault. He's looking for Mr. Rogers. I
Well,
don't
I
know if
mean,
there's a
yeah,
Mr.
I think
Rogers.
he
Maybe.
realizes. I think he realizes that's not going to happen.
Right,
It's like
right,
all the people. I think it was last season who, when they were asked, "What do you want in an alliance partner?" It's like someone who will be loyal to me to illogical ends. But they all
right.
know that's
Oh,
not
for
going to
sure.
happen.
But I
Uh,
think he also was describing Banu as one of the people that he was kind of leaning towards,
mm,
and maybe he can crush Banu's heart.
yeah.
I don't know,
Ouch.
but I'm just
Ouch.
saying, there seems to be that might be something that could
Yeah.
happen, because he does
Yeah.
describe one of his greatest attributes as being perceptive, and he seems, the description he's providing, it sounds very much like Banu. So I'm curious if that's the individual that
Hmm.
he was also speaking about.
Yeah. Now, Jelinski compared his charisma to that of Rick Devens, which is quite a tall order.
Yes.
Um, and but he worries his kryptonite will be arrogance. And he
Hmm.
also said he used to argue and argue with people till they admitted he was right, though he calmed down on that front. However,
Yeah.
so he could use my poster here, David, you're right. I'm sorry, you'll have to use your first name, Jelinski, but but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Um, he also thinks he'll be able to read the jury if he makes it that far, which does kind of have that whiff of arrogance to it in that he hasn't even set foot in the game yet, but he
Yeah.
seems very certain that he'll be able to read the jury.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Jeff Probst and the staff psychologist think he makes connections too early, but Jelinski says he would cut his number one. So
Hmm.
who's going to be right here? Like, is he going to do it just to prove them wrong? Which I think would be funny. Um,
A little arrogant, right?
Yeah. He did say something that goes along with a topic we frequently discuss. He said, "You got to know who the threats are. When it's down to 7, that's when I really need to start taking people out. But with that being said, you got to know when to take these people out. I want to be the biggest threat. I'll figure out how to manage it. It's easier said than done." And he's right about all that, especially the "it's easier said than done" part.
Hmm.
Now, the weirdest thing he said was he can make fire with his mind. Now, I'm hoping that he was speaking metaphorically and basically saying he's so good at it, he can think about it and it happens, rather than that he believes he has the ability to literally do that.
I
Because
don't think he believes he can literally just make fire with his mind.
there are people who believe some strange stuff who have come to this show. So,
That is
uh,
fair. That is fair.
so I don't rule anything out.
Hmm.
But I'm hopeful he's just talking about it metaphorically. But
Yes.
the worst thing Jelinski said by far
Uh-oh.
was that LeBron James is the GOAT over Michael Jordan.
Oh.
And I simply cannot accept such slander. And therefore, I'm telling you now, he will not be my winner pick.
Well, what is he, like 22 years old?
Yeah.
What has he had more exposure to in his life?
I don't care. Do the research. Before you
I,
make
I
a
know.
statement like that, do the
I'm just
research.
saying. He's seen LeBron. He didn't live through the Michael Jordan that we lived
I
through,
know.
okay?
I
So he
know.
just doesn't understand the greatness of Michael Jordan in the same way that we do.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Fine. Defend him. You're used to
I'm
defend,
just saying, I mean,
Yeah.
he's young.
Yes.
He doesn't
Yes.
have the experience that we
Right.
do.
Right. All right. Um, well, someone who is not quite as young, but still, young to me, is Jessica.
My
Uh,
namesake.
yes, who is 37 and a software engineer from Hong Kong and Toronto, now in San Francisco.
Hmm.
She goes by Jess, I think. She
Yes.
is an identical twin, and I have to say, I'm sure I've said this before. I have long wanted a season of all identical twins
Oh
on
gosh.
two tribes so that we could see how they interact differently.
Hmm.
Like, are they going to team up with the same people, or are they
Mm.
going to like get mad at each other? And then when they come together at the merge, like, how could you team up with that person?
That
Um,
would be quite fun. I
I
like this
know, but
concept.
so far Jeff hasn't listened. I don't understand why.
Maybe because you say things about Jeff.
I think it's more because they're afraid that the audience would be way too confused. Um,
That's fair. That is fair.
yeah. Um, Now, this Jess is another one whose husband and family are huge Survivor fans and got her into it during Co Wrong. Uh,
Hmm.
she said her husband is very process driven, which sounds like me, while she is gut oriented.
Mm.
She even said he's tried to teach her board games and Dungeons and Dragons, all of which are very rules oriented and unsurprisingly, I enjoy. But she said, I don't have patience for the rules and stuff.
Uh-huh.
We're going to have a little talk here, Jess, if you don't have
She might need a
patience for the
poster
rules.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I do think that one of the other things that she referenced is that when somebody crosses me or does something that I think is egregious, like bullying someone, I'll usually do something about it. If I don't confront them directly, I'm going to turn everyone against them. Public opinion is more important than anything else. So there's a couple of things here
Hmm.
that I just want to unpack. Like we've said, perception is reality. And so if you really can destroy someone's public opinion of you out in the island, then that becomes the reality, regardless of it being true. So if she's able to utilize it in that way, that would be fun to watch.
Hmm.
But I also don't want her to end up being confrontational. I understand the need to want to protect people who are potentially being bullied, but she also needs to be mindful of how that could then change the perception of her. And
Hmm.
so I'm just hoping that she's able to keep that in check. And if she's just able to just wreck someone's social game or based upon their public opinion, I thought was a very interesting thing to know for the potential Survivor game that she's going to
Hmm.
play.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so, all right. So there's a David and Jessica on the same tribe in this season.
Right? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Craziness.
But we can move on now to the next player.
Okay. Oh, Kenzie. So
Yes.
we are introducing Kenzie. She is a 29-year-old salon owner she currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina. The interesting. Well, she describes herself as positive, creative, perseverant. She's definitely done some things in her time. She started her own salon business. She did say that she isn't going to tell people she's an owner, but that she works at a salon. Again, very similar to what we've already talked about
Right.
with Jem, where you can still talk about what you do. You can minimize it a little bit to
Hmm.
say you're not as much of a potential threat. She did say that she was going to play up being dumb, but she was also looking for her lobster. So I thought that was, she certainly wants like a ride or die. She is one of the players that I feel like was most noticed in Ponderosa. She was another
Hmm.
one that a lot of people were referring to. And so she certainly must be giving off some type of vibe when she is around the individuals that she is spending a significant amount of time in silence with. I do think that she is probably going to do well socially, considering there's people that have already made note of her. And I think that her ability to navigate her way through the current, job that she has and the life that she's living and the business that she's running, that could potentially put her in a good place in this game as well to kind of work through any
Hmm.
issues or problems that might arise. She did say that she is one of the, happiest places to work ever. And so maybe she's able to create some good spirit in the place that she is existing in. So I feel like she's probably going to be in a good place socially, which will help carry her through the game. And I did also think that it was nice that she said, as a society, we like to look at decorated things. We like Christmas trees. We like the Sistine Chapel. We like beautiful women with tattoos. So I thought that was quite fun because clearly she has made an impression on
Yes.
many of the people who have seen her in Ponderosa, and that was one of the ways in which they described her. So I'm
Yes.
excited for Kenzie. I certainly am.
Okay. I'm a little worried about some things because she talks about how she moves quickly in her decisions and actions. Now, that can be good in Survivor,
Hmm.
but also mentioned everything I've ever wanted in life, I've succeeded.
Yes.
But she also acknowledged some bumps in the road. So I worry about her not succeeding with every plan on Survivor. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Kenzie started watching Survivor during the early stages of the pandemic when she went to get a toilet paper roll from her psychic, who was a super fan. So if Kenzie does well, this would be the first time a psychic did anything useful. Of course, I also have to wonder why a psychic bothers to watch Survivor since they should already know what happens ahead of time. But I digress. Kenzie did note that, well, you already talked about needing to be socially savvy. And, it's she identifies with Carolyn and also like Cassidy. So that's two people who studied the rules before going out. We don't know anything about whether Kenzie did the same thing.
Sorry, that's one of the funniest things you've ever said. I'm sorry. That was just incredible. Anyway.
Oh, good. Um,
I'm sorry. That was just great. It's a great point.
um,
Psychics just shouldn't be watching Survivor.
yeah, why bother?
Anyway.
Now, another thing Kenzie said she has to work on, or one thing, is keeping a secret, which is important. You don't want to break the second rule. And
Certainly.
that also goes to idols and advantages, where she wants to keep it to herself if she finds one, but knows it will be difficult. I'm going to bet that she'll tell people, just judging from what she was saying about herself.
Yeah.
So I'm more middle of the road with her than you were.
Well, but you know what's interesting? I will say that I feel like there is a shift that has happened in the new
Mm-hmm.
era of Survivor where people like Kenzie thrive in a game like this now because there is this celebration of individuals who are a little more
Mm-hmm.
quirky and a little bit, I mean, she talked about Carolyn and a lot of people have and I feel like they've seen that and they can appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that is scary to someone playing this game now that they've seen individuals like this go very far in the game.
I mean, they
So,
literally left 2 days after Jam Jam and Carolyn
right,
were in the finals.
right. So I feel like that must be in the forefront of a lot of people's minds
Yes.
who don't necessarily feel that same type of
Mm-hmm.
person or character in this game. So I'm curious if that's going to work against her, if they're going to look at her and say, well, but I don't know if she's going to necessarily come across as that quirky. So it'll be interesting to see, but I just know that a lot of people seemed very interested and curious about her in their descriptions as they were being asked about people they've noticed.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can move on to Q. Uh, Q is 29, a real estate agent originally from Mississippi and now in Memphis. He was a college football player who tried to get into the NFL but didn't. So he moved to accounting, which is what his degree was, and then moved to real estate when he realized he hated accounting. Um, so uh, I think the latter will do well for him because a big part of the job is dealing with people. But he also noted, I could have stayed home and worked for 2 or 3 months and made $1 million. So he better not mention that to his fellow players,
Yeah.
or they'll send him back home where he can make that $1 million.
Yeah. I
Uh,
am a little concerned that he's not going to be that humble.
that's a possibility. Yeah, I could
Mhm.
definitely see that. Um, now, Q has almost a whole Survivor season of siblings as one of
Yes,
17 kids.
right?
So he said every day was a fight or a celebration, which also sounds a lot like Survivor. Uh,
Mhm, for sure.
his history with Survivor is similar to many that we've discussed. Started watching early in the pandemic. Also, similar to others, his wife is the super fan, and she introduced him to the show. He
Mhm.
watched every season in 3 months, which is great. But we've talked previously that this doesn't really give a person time for true analysis of what's happening.
Sure.
And now Mike and Rob discussed at one point that doesn't matter when a person started watching Survivor if they have gone back, watched everything, etc. And I think they're right. I'm not going to say that someone who started watching 4 years ago is better or worse necessarily, but if you watch it all in 3 months, what analysis can you really be doing at that point?
Yeah, you're really cramming it all in your
Um,
brain in a really short amount of time.
right. So it's not so much the when he started watching, it's the how quickly he was doing it.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
he did talk about the way the game has evolved, but does he understand the true workings? I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, But he does recognize, quote, I'm coming into this game, all odds are against me. I'm young, I'm athletic, I would say I'm likable, so that's a recipe for disaster. So he plans to act like a shield by having a plan to get rid of other people. Unfortunately, his plan is ambitious to say the least. With
Mm-hmm.
him saying he'll just win challenges at final 7, 6, 5, and then make fire at 4, as if boom, it's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, right.
He'll just whip through those.
Well,
So
yeah.
yeah, if that's
And
your
this is the
plan,
concern, right?
yeah,
This is the concern I have about him not necessarily being humble because he's got to get there first
hmm
in order to potentially win those challenges. And if he sounds like he's very successful in his career and he's done very very well for himself.
I mean,
And
if you
so
can make
he's
a
a
$1,000,000 in a few months, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
right. And so he's another one that I'm a little concerned with, as I am with Maria,
hmm
who might just come out with, full force, too fast, too
Yeah.
quick. And people might be like, whoa, I mean, if they need him in challenges, that could be one thing, but it's also something that worries me with this grand plan that he has about making it that far to then
Right.
win those challenges. I think that might be nipped in the bud pretty quick.
Yeah, I think I see very little chance they will vote him out first because of
Right.
challenges. But I also don't see him making it to final 7, 6, 5,
Right.
like you
Exactly. I
believe.
agree. I agree.
All right. Next up, someone who is trying to steal the name of one of our friends here.
I am flipping. Yes, Tiffany.
Yes.
Tiffany, who is 33 years old. She is an artist. And she's from New Jersey. And she did ask if eating counts as a hobby. And I'm just going to say yes. Yes, it does, Tiffany. I would
Yeah.
completely say that that does count as a hobby. Uh, she has a very interesting story as well, like how she's been able
hmm
to kind of create her own business job.
Right.
I mean, it's just really quite incredible that she is an artist and she sounds like she's incredibly successful as what she
hmm
does. I mean, she's had her art displayed in Madison Square Garden. She's worked with major brands like Nike and Adidas. And this, she said, was all just me. And so she's
Yeah.
another one that is like full force, like this, I can do this. But I do feel like there's less of that forcefulness like that we might have seen with the other two, with Maria and with Q, that we were just talking about. She did say that her kryptonite is I'm too nice sometimes and she cannot control her facial expressions, which will be great for a viewer or as
hmm
viewers to watch the facial expressions. We know that we always enjoy a good facial
Right.
expression, but it could be a giveaway for her when she's out on the
Yes.
island. She also talks about when she's upset, how, letting everybody know that I'm upset is
hmm
going to be something she might struggle with. When it comes to keeping secrets, though, she can do that. So I think that that is certainly going to bode well for her in the game. But she does think that people will perceive her as docile, sweet, and also an easy to be artist. So she's someone who's going to lean into that perception, if
hmm
you will. So I don't know how much she'll actually share about how successful she has been in her field, because that might worry some people about her tenacity
hmm
and what she's able to bring about in her existence. But she also, did say that she is a by any means necessary type of girl. So it sounds like she is certainly willing to play this game and make the hard decisions and do what she's got to do. And she described someone who I think is Q as someone that she is interested in potentially working with. And so him being on her tribe, maybe that's
hmm
something that we'll end up seeing a relationship created there, because she is looking for a ride or die.
Yes.
So I think overall she has a very interesting approach to the game. And I think that overall she's certainly someone who I enjoyed. And I do love that she was talking about advantages and said, why can't people just shut the F up about
Yes.
them? Like, why do they have to tell everyone? So
Yes.
love, love, love that part as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Why, time and time again, Survivor history has proven to us that revealing your advantages is a poor decision for gaining trust. So yeah, shut your ass up is what she ended
I
that
love
quote
that.
with. Now, so she has been a fan since she was a teenager and even applied 10 years ago. Um, And one thing she said immediately was that she's an emotional person, but knows she can't make the mistake of getting caught up in them. So she recognizes the importance of Rule 4. And she also talked about building relationships and making others think she wants what is also best for them in terms of using it as a survivor skill. And I agree. Uh, but then again, you have the problem of not being able to control facial expressions and also not having a filter when people, if she gets upset.
Mm-hmm.
I worry a bit, much like I did with Kenzie, about her discussion of being in Tiffany's world where usually things go her way.
Yeah.
Like she said, she does well overall in the lottery. Okay.
Yes, right.
If
Yeah.
you play the lottery regularly, you don't do well overall in it. I'm sorry. You just don't. And it sounds a lot like confirmation bias to me. It's, remembering the hits and forgetting the misses. I've played poker with people like that, who'll be like, oh, I win a lot. And I know for a fact they don't.
Right.
So, yeah. Uh, I do like her attitude in terms of flexibility and scheming. She said, I don't care who I have to lie to. I don't care what alliances I have to switch. I'm in the guys alliance. I'm in the girls alliance. Hell, I'll be in the trees alliance if that's going to give me a step further in the game. And it reminds me of, the other Tiffany talking about being in an alliance with the crabs. So I just worry she might make unnecessary big moves because of it.
Yeah.
So on this one tribe, we have a David, a Jessica, and a
A
Tiffany.
Tiffany.
So it
It's
encompasses
like our
all of us.
dream.
It's all of us because Voce is also a David.
I
So
know.
yes,
So, and we refer to Voce
Yes.
by his last name, and we have a
Right.
Jelinski. So
Yes.
there's some things happening here.
Yes. So, all right. With that, a tribal prediction we need. I know you think Kenzie will do well in social bonds. I worry about her and I worry about Tiffany because both of them talked about how they've always succeeded. And I worry they could be taken in by a fake plan. One of them could realize they're not the actual target. I think David and Jessica will do well, not just because those are their names. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the people who think things always go well for themselves.
Well, and I do agree with your assessment. In just looking at the tribe makeup overall
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that we've got, because here we can look at some potential connections, right?
Right.
Where we do have Jelinski is looking at Banu, if I'm saying it, pronouncing that correctly. Is
Banu.
it Banu? Banu,
Banu.
thank you. So, and then you also have Tiffany who is looking at Q, and so there is a connection there. That kind of puts Jessica in this, middle position.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some reservations with Jessica because I do think that she doesn't really have that much of a set structure when she was presenting how she necessarily wants to play this
Mm-hmm.
game. So I'm hoping that I still really feel like she's someone who is going to be more
Mm-hmm.
willing to adapt and change and consider other components if someone comes to her with an idea. But I do tend to agree that the one person who's kind of it besides Jessica without, not having that
Mm-hmm.
connection is going to be a Kenzie, who might be someone that just is the she might be someone who they just look at and go, you know what, we just saw someone very similar to
Right.
Kenzie make it all the way to the end, and we don't want to repeat
Right.
history here. So we need to take Kenzie out first. So
Yeah.
I could see that being a real issue, especially since she is someone who people have made note of and people are very interested in kind of seeking out. And so that might not go well for her because people
Right.
are already looking at her. So clearly she's making some type of an impression in Ponderosa, which can have an effect on the game. So I
Yeah.
don't think that that is an incorrect assessment, even though I think she sounds like a lovely human being and I'm hoping that she ends up doing well. I can't pick Jessica as going out first because that
That's
would be
right.
terrible,
Obviously.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So I would have to agree with
Okay.
Kenzie.
All right. So it's time for our overall predictions.
Oh God.
We've already talked about who our thoughts on, who might be first ish out. Um, I would love to see David and Jessica, aka Jelinski and Jess, in the finals. I don't think it will happen. I keep finding myself drawn back to Tevin. I just had that
Oh,
gut
really?
reaction from the first time I saw him on screen, and I can't get away from it. I just he has this charisma. He has I it's similar to what I felt about Jam Jam when I saw Jam Jam on screen.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating.
So I'm gonna say Tevin, and we'll see if that feeling can bring it through again.
Well, I tell you what, I didn't pick the same person, but I went with someone on the same tribe because I was definitely struggling when I was going through trying to determine who I thought was going to be the winner pick. I wanted to be able to be like Jessica. I was going to pick
Mhm.
Jessica just because of my namesake, but then I wasn't really getting that feeling from her.
Yeah.
And then I was going through the interviews again and I was listening and I was just, who has this feeling about them? And gosh, Soda is just really like, there is something about her
Mhm.
that is very just so likable, and I
Are
don't
you
think she's
saying soda really pops?
yeah, I'm sure she's going to appreciate that.
Yes, yes.
There is just something about her that I just feel like she isn't going to be someone that is going to be perceived as a threat. She
Mhm.
is someone who socially I think is going to be able to make bonds and connect. And I just feel like she's going to put herself in a good position moving forward in the game. And so that was someone I kept gravitating back towards as well. And so I finally was just like, you know what, that's it. I'm making my decision. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Soda, because I just got you like voted out of the game. It's
Oh
terrible.
my. Oh my. All right.
So,
Well, with that, let me let's let everybody know, in case you didn't already, that the rules that we just talked about, well, I mean, we mostly talked about the people, but we talked about the rules too, are available uh, in poster form. And
ooh, look at this.
yeah, look at this. Just go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster, click on it, and order it. And our shipping department will get it right out to you.
Yes, I
Uh,
promise.
you can also click on the poster on a t-shirt, the one I am wearing, for example. Or you could go to that checklist we talked about earlier, which one
Mhm.
player likes checklists and one person doesn't believe in them. So either way, you should get one of these shirts. So especially the people who say they don't follow the rules, they need the poster and
They
the shirt.
definitely need the poster. Yeah.
So uh, again, robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed. Um, with that, uh, where can people find us, Jessica?
Well, people can find me at Jessica Lewis 89 on, I'm going to refer to it as Twitter and not X.
Yes.
I have been a little bit silent in the social world as of late.
Hmm.
Things have been a little crazy and busy. However, because
You just
Survivor is
you just
starting,
liked a bunch of my Facebook posts from like months ago. I thought it was
I
pretty
did. I
funny.
was
Yeah, I
finally
could
like, I need
tell.
to play catch up
Yeah.
because this is my life. I feel like I'm always playing catch up with everything. But, Survivor brings me back into this space.
Hmm.
It is a space that I love to be in. So you can definitely find me there. And I do live tweet during the episodes this Wednesday. I know that, the big premiere, I'm hoping I will be able to do so because I will be in the middle of a very large work related
Yeah.
activity that particular week. But also, David Bloomberg, I will say, has never left the social scene because he is retired and now he gets to spend so much time podcasting. As you've probably seen, he's been doing so many podcasts in between Survivor seasons. And here he is in his LinkedIn page with all
Nope.
of the places that you can.
Linktree. Linktree.
Linktree,
LinkedIn.
excuse me.
I'm barely on. I've posted
Okay,
one
so
thing on LinkedIn.
Linktree is where you want to
Mm.
find all of the great Survivor related content as it relates to David Bloomberg. However, he tweets about all kinds of things, he posts
Yes.
about all kinds of things. There are TikToks, there are videos, there's so many things that you can find that David Bloomberg is putting out into the universe. So here it is in his linked tree.
Linktree, yes, it's Linktree /David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in Linktree. Um, Or you can find me more directly on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky as @DavidBloomberg, and on the video platforms TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as @DavidBloombergTV. And because Threads is connected to Instagram, I'm @DavidBloombergTV there as well. On the video places, I have been recently posting 2 or 3 reality TV short videos uh, each day. And of course, that will continue or increase with the return of Survivor. Lately, they've been Traders US thoughts, Australian Survivor, mini Why Blank Losts, and other videos from that show, and some Survivor flashback videos from older seasons. Um, and as you mentioned, I have also been podcasting during the break. I've co-hosted. I'm still co-hosting the Tradar podcast's coverage of the Traders US. And I'm also appearing somewhat regularly on the Truth Unrestricted podcast, which is definitely not an entertainment podcast, but rather one that goes into politics and science and philosophical matters. And so if you're just looking for reality TV, don't go there. But if you're looking for these other topics, many of which I discuss on Twitter as well, then you can check that out. As we continue to wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons. And there's Facebook groups and Discord and early access to various things. Like there's a show coming in, or a watch party, RHAP coming to Chicago this season. And all the after party tickets sold out. Even all the patrons couldn't get them. So, if you're not a patron, forget about it.
Right.
But there's still, you can still get tickets to the show. And of course, there's other things that come from being a patron, like you can support shows like ours and everything on the network. So again, robhasawebsite.com/patron. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all the reality TV RHAP-Up podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP-Ups feeds and selecting your podcast service of choice. You'll find us, the B&B, Survivor International, and all those podcasts, plus podcasts on a number of other shows and topics from reality TV to who knows what. So, go there and make sure you're getting the whole RHAP-Ups feed.
That's right. Can I do thank yous?
Yes.
We would like to thank Scott St. Pierre for all of the editing that he does, not only for the Why Blank Lost podcast, but also for all of the content that you just heard David Bloomberg describing. There is so much content that is available out there. So we have to thank everyone who not only does all of the editing and supports RHAP in the manner that they do, but just all of the incredible support that Rob provides to everyone who is part of this group and the viewers and the patrons. So thank you everyone for all of your support. And also thank you to Will from America. I don't think theme song, is it attached to the video or is it still just
No.
attached
That was
to?
something I was going to figure out over the break, and I never did.
Yeah, so we still have to work on that, but
Yeah.
it is a catchy little tune, so thank you for that. And listen, thanks everyone for coming back and listening to David and I again. This is so
Yes.
much fun. It's been a while, and we do hope that you will enjoy another season with the two of us. Thank you, David, for your patience with me as always. I do appreciate it. And this is going to be an exciting season, so I can't wait to see how it's all going to shake out.
Yep. And so we will see everyone in just a little over a week from when this should get posted. And so looking forward to that. That's about it. So thank you again, Jessica. And thank you, listeners and viewers. We'll see you soon. Bye.